Do you ever get the feeling that everybody knows something, but nobody wants to say it out loud? Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? The whispers in the streets, the looks, the silence before the storm. Because deep down, the community knows. Oh, they know. They see it going down. They feel the shift. They sense the chaos bubbling right under the surface. And when the pressure builds long enough, haitars, jet, sent. Not by accident, not by surprise, but by design. See, society loves to pretend everything's fine. Smile for the cameras, clap for the noise, scroll past the warning signs. But tonight, we're not pretending. Tonight, we're talking about what happens when the masks slip, when the truth gets uncomfortable, and when the community decides it's had enough. Because whether you whisper it or scream it, it's going down. And the community, they already know. People think the streets are blind. They think the walls don't listen, that the screens don't remember, that the crowd is too distracted to notice the cracks forming beneath the surface. But the community sees everything. It sees the small shifts in behavior, the sudden alliances, the forced smiles that don't reach the eyes. It notices who moves different when the lights are on and who moves different when they think nobody's watching. You can hide from one person. You can fool a few, but you can't outsmart the collective awareness of a whole community. The community reads patterns. It connects dots that individuals ignore. It remembers promises that were made loudly and broken quietly. It keeps track of who stood up when it mattered and who disappeared when things got uncomfortable. Even when no one speaks, the observation continues. Conversations happen in living rooms, in group chats, in late-night whispers. The judgment isn't always loud, but it's forming. Every action leaves a trace, and every trace gets stored somewhere in the shared memory of the people. There's a rhythm to how truth spreads. It doesn't always explode at first. Sometimes it crawls, sometimes it lingers in silence. But awareness builds weight. The more people notice the same thing, the heavier it becomes. That weight turns into tension. And tension, when stretched too far, snaps. The community doesn't react randomly. It reacts when the evidence becomes undeniable, when the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. What makes it powerful isn't noise, it's unity. One voice can be dismissed, 10 can be debated. But when an entire community starts nodding in agreement, when eyes meet and silently confirm the same reality, that's when something shifts. That's when accountability stops being optional. People underestimate this because they mistake quiet for weakness. They think that because no one is confronting them directly, no one is paying attention. But observation is not approval. Silence is not ignorance. In today's world, awareness travels faster than ever. Screenshots don't disappear. Messages resurface. Actions replay. Reputations are no longer controlled by one narrative. They are shaped by collective interpretation. And once the community forms an opinion, reversing it isn't easy. Trust is fragile, and once cracks appear, everyone sees them. The illusion of control fades quickly when people compare notes. The community also senses energy. It feels authenticity, and it detects manipulation. You can package something nicely, wrap it in confidence, deliver it with charm. But if the intention is crooked, the community feels it eventually. There's always someone watching closely, someone analyzing quietly, someone waiting for consistency. When words don't align with actions, that mismatch becomes visible. Power doesn't always belong to the loudest voice. Sometimes it belongs to the observers, the ones gathering information, weighing behavior, and waiting for the right moment. And when enough observers reach the same conclusion, the atmosphere changes. Conversations grow sharper. Patience grows thinner. The benefit of the doubt disappears. People laugh, they post, they carry on like everything's normal. But beneath that surface, awareness is active. The community doesn't forget. It calculates. It evaluates. It measures character over time. And once the verdict forms collectively, it moves together, not out of impulse, but out of certainty. There's a strange kind of quiet that settles in before everything changes. It's not peace. It's not resolution. It's pressure. The kind you can't see but you can feel in the air. Conversations get shorter. Smiles look tighter. People start watching more and speaking less. That's how the storm begins. Not with noise, but with stillness. Silence is misunderstood. People think if no one is shouting, nothing is wrong. If there's no confrontation, everything must be fine. But silence can be strategic. It can be observation. It can be preparation. When the noise fades, that's often when the thinking starts. The community doesn't stop reacting. It starts calculating. Every move is noted. Every inconsistency is remembered. In that silence, patterns become clearer. Without distraction, the truth stands out. People replay moments in their heads. They compare stories. They notice who benefits, who manipulates, who pretends not to know. The quiet becomes heavy, because everyone senses the same thing, even if no one says it yet. It's like standing outside before a thunderstorm. The sky hasn't cracked, but the tension in the atmosphere is undeniable. Silence before the storm is dangerous because it builds momentum. Words unspoken don't disappear, they stack up. Frustrations that aren't expressed don't fade, they deepen. Doubts that aren't addressed don't dissolve, they multiply. The longer the quiet lasts, the stronger the reaction will be when it finally breaks. People don't explode over one moment. They erupt over accumulated ones. There's also a shift in behavior during this phase. People start pulling back. Energy changes. Support becomes conditional. Attention turns into scrutiny. Those who once defended begin to question. Those who once trusted begin to verify. It's subtle at first, a different tone, a delayed response, a missing presence. But those signals mean something. They are warning signs that the ground is shaking beneath the surface. The storm doesn't announce itself loudly at first. It gathers. It forms in layers. Every ignored concern becomes a dark cloud. Every broken promise adds thunder. Every act of disrespect becomes lightning waiting to strike. And the longer those elements build without resolution, the more powerful the impact will be. What makes this silence powerful is that it's collective. It's not just one person stepping back, it's many. Not just one doubt forming, but several aligning. When people start independently reaching the same conclusions, that's when the air becomes electric. The storm becomes inevitable. Some mistake this phase as control. They think because nothing dramatic is happening, they're safe. But quiet doesn't mean forgotten. It means observed. It means assessed. It means people are deciding what comes next. And when that decision is finally made, it won't be random or emotional. It will feel justified, even necessary. By the time the storm hits, it won't feel sudden to those who were paying attention. It will feel overdue, because long before the thunder, long before the confrontation, long before the consequences, there was silence. And in that silence, everything was already moving toward impact. Power rarely announces itself with fireworks. It moves quietly, strategically, in rooms most people never enter, while attention is focused on the surface. The noise, the drama, the distractions, real decisions are being shaped in the shadows. Not every move is visible. Not every intention is spoken. And not every alliance is obvious at first glance. The shadows are where calculations happen, where risks are measured, where outcomes are predicted before a single public action takes place. People assume that what they see is the full story, but what they see is often just the performance. Behind that performance are conversations layered with motive, agreements made with conditions, plans built with contingencies. Power understands timing. It knows that acting too early exposes strategy, and acting too late loses influence. So it waits. It studies the environment. It reads the temperature of the room, the mood of the crowd, the loyalty of supporters. It doesn't rush unless rushing benefits it. And when it moves, it does so with purpose. Those operating in the shadows rely on information. Information is leverage. Knowing who is divided, who is frustrated, who is ambitious, that knowledge becomes currency. The more you know about others, the more options you have, and options create control. Control doesn't always look aggressive. Sometimes it looks calm, even friendly. But underneath that calm is awareness of exactly which strings can be pulled. There's also an understanding that influence spreads differently than authority. Authority demands. Influence persuades. In the shadows, influence is cultivated carefully. Relationships are formed not for connection, but for positioning. Favors are exchanged with memory attached. Support is offered with expectation, stored quietly for later. Nothing is random. Every gesture can be an investment. While the public debates what is happening, those in the shadows are deciding what will happen next. They anticipate reactions before reactions occur. They prepare narratives before questions are asked. They adjust their approach based on how the community is shifting. Flexibility becomes strength. Adaptation becomes survival. The most underestimated aspect of power moves is patience. Patience allows strategy to mature. It allows opponents to reveal themselves. It allows mistakes to surface without interference. Instead of interrupting chaos, power sometimes lets chaos unfold, knowing that confusion weakens resistance. When people are distracted, they are easier to outmaneuver. But operating in the shadows carries risk. If exposed too soon, trust collapses. If miscalculated, alliances fracture. That's why precision matters. Every step is weighed. Every word is chosen carefully. Silence is used as a shield. Ambiguity becomes protection. The less others know about your plan, the less they can disrupt it. What appears sudden to the outside world is often the result of months of quiet preparation. When a shift finally becomes visible, it feels dramatic. But it was built piece by piece, behind doors, in whispers, through subtle positioning. By the time most people notice, the foundation has already been set. Power doesn't always need to shout. It doesn't need applause to validate itself. It understands that the loudest voices are not always the strongest. Strength often sits back, observes, calculates, and then moves decisively when the moment is right. And when that movement happens, it reveals that the real game was never on the surface. It was always being played in the shadows. Pressure doesn't appear all at once. It builds quietly, layer by layer, moment by moment. A small disappointment here. A broken promise there. A sign of disrespect brushed off as minor. At first, it feels manageable. People tell themselves it's not that serious. They convince themselves to stay patient. But pressure doesn't disappear just because it's ignored. It accumulates. Every unaddressed issue adds weight. Every time accountability is avoided, the tension increases. The community absorbs it, even if no one reacts immediately. People internalize frustration. They observe, they wait. And as they wait, their tolerance shifts. What was once acceptable becomes questionable. What was once ignored becomes remembered. Pressure changes perception. It sharpens awareness. It forces people to evaluate patterns instead of isolated incidents. One mistake can be forgiven. Two can be debated. But repeated behavior forms a narrative. And once a narrative forms, it shapes belief. Belief shapes expectation. Expectation shapes response. There comes a point when endurance turns into resistance. When patience stops feeling like strength and starts feeling like silence. The atmosphere becomes charged. Conversations become more direct. Questions become harder. The benefit of the doubt slowly disappears. Not out of anger, but out of realization. Action doesn't erupt randomly. It emerges from clarity, from a shared understanding that enough is enough. When multiple individuals reach the same conclusion independently, that's when momentum begins. People who were once passive start aligning. They start speaking. They start coordinating. The shift is subtle at first, but it's undeniable. Pressure also forces truth to the surface. Under normal conditions, flaws can be hidden behind charm, excuses, or distraction. But under sustained tension, those masks begin to crack. The real intentions show. The real loyalties reveal themselves. And when clarity replaces confusion, decisions become easier to make. There's a difference between reacting emotionally and acting deliberately. When pressure turns into action, it's usually the result of calculation, not impulse. The community weighs consequences. It considers outcomes. It measures fairness. And once that internal debate ends, the movement becomes focused. The energy changes at that moment. What was once scattered becomes unified. What was once quiet becomes coordinated. People stop asking if something should be done and start deciding how it will be done. The shift from discussion to execution is powerful. It signals that the phase of observation has ended. Those who underestimated the pressure often misread this transformation. They assumed the silence meant compliance. They assumed the patience meant weakness. But pressure was building strength the entire time. It was solidifying resolve. It was aligning perspectives. It was preparing for impact. When action finally happens, it feels decisive. Not chaotic, not reckless, but intentional. Because it wasn't born from a single moment of anger. It was born from accumulated evidence, from repeated patterns, from a shared realization that change requires movement. Pressure is powerful because it tests limits. It reveals character. It exposes durability. And when those limits are crossed too many times, action becomes not just an option, but an inevitability driven by conviction rather than noise. There's a moment when everything shifts from discussion to consequence. When the warnings have been ignored, the patterns have been confirmed, and the community has reached its limit. That's when the message becomes clear hitters sent. Not out of chaos, not out of emotion, but out of decision. Hitters aren't always individuals. Sometimes they're consequences. Sometimes they're exposure. Sometimes they're the withdrawal of support that once protected someone from accountability. They represent action with intent. Precision instead of noise. Strategy instead of outrage. Before that moment, there were chances. Opportunities to correct course. Signals that something wasn't sitting right. But when those signals are dismissed repeatedly, the response escalates. The community doesn't jump to its strongest move first. It observes, it evaluates. It allows room for adjustment. When adjustment doesn't happen, the tone changes. Sending hitters means the phase of patience has ended. It means conversations behind closed doors are over. The evidence has been gathered. The alignment has happened. And now, instead of whispering, the community moves. Not recklessly, but deliberately. Consequences have weight because they carry collective backing. One accusation can be denied. One complaint can be brushed off. But when action comes with unified energy behind it, it becomes difficult to ignore. That unity is what gives force to the movement. It's no longer personal. It's structural. There's also a psychological shift in this phase. Those who once felt uncertain now feel resolved. Doubt turns into confidence. Hesitation turns into execution. The decision to act removes ambiguity. It draws a line. It sends a signal that standards exist, and those standards matter. The phrase itself carries intensity because it implies preparation. Hitters aren't sent casually. They're deployed when the groundwork has been laid. That groundwork includes observation, pattern recognition, confirmation, and consensus. By the time action begins, it's not a surprise to those paying attention. It's the expected outcome of ignored warnings. This stage often feels sudden to the person on the receiving end. They may claim they were blindsided, but the signs were there. The silence was heavy. The questions were sharper. The support was thinning. The atmosphere had already shifted. The only surprise is that they didn't notice the build-up. Consequences don't always look dramatic. Sometimes they look like opportunities disappearing, invitations stopping, voices withdrawing endorsement, trust evaporating. Other times they're louder: public exposure, open confrontation, undeniable accountability. The form may vary, but the intent is consistent correction through impact. When hitters are sent, it's a declaration that the community values integrity over comfort. That unity outweighs individual influence. That actions carry results. It reinforces a truth many forget: reputation is sustained by behavior, not by image. At this point, the cycle completes itself. Observation led to awareness. Awareness led to pressure. Pressure led to clarity. And clarity led to action. What once felt like quiet tension transforms into decisive movement, backed by collective certainty.